CEO refuses to help Black father in need. But fate forces him to rethink everything. Snowflakes swirled like shards of glass in the bitter Chicago wind, stinging any skin foolish enough to face the open air. The morning rush pushed past the revolving glass doors of Hayes Global, each person bundled in expensive wool and moving with purpose. On the wide marble steps, Marcus Carter stood still. His coat was clean but threadbare, his boots scuffed from years of wear. In his hand, a thin mittened one, was his 6-year-old daughter, Ava. She coughed quietly, the sound lost in the roar of traffic. When the tall figure of Daniel Hayes, CEO and owner of the glass tower, emerged, Marcus stepped forward, his voice steady but urgent. "Sir, I just need a job. Anything. My daughter's sick." Daniel didn't slow his stride. His blue scarf whipped in the wind as he gave Marcus a quick cutting glance. "The last time I helped someone like you," he paused just enough for the words to sting, "I lost everything." Behind him, 2 security guards moved in their black gloves firm on Marcus's shoulder. Ava's small hand slipped from her father's grip as they ushered them toward the sidewalk. Her cough grew harsher, folding her little body forward. Daniel didn't look back. What Daniel didn't know was that this man had already saved his life once before. Inside the building, the warmth of the lobby wrapped around Daniel like armor. Polished marble floors reflected his reflection, crisp suit silk tie, the image of control. He was 45, a self-made man in every headline. Raised in a cramped apartment on the South Side, he'd clawed his way up one calculated risk at a time. And yet buried under those victories was a scar that shaped everything years ago. A trusted partner had bled him dry, leaving him broke, humiliated, and vowing never to be fooled again. To Daniel, trust was weakness, and weakness was an open door for loss. Across the city, Marcus Carter was guiding Ava through the crowded bus terminal. The overhead lights buzzed faintly. She was still coughing, her small fingers clutching his coat for warmth. He had been a structural engineer once, proud of his work, proud of providing for his family. But 2 years of caring for a dying wife had emptied his savings, cost him his job, and left gaps in his resume that no company wanted to overlook. They reached their apartment where the heating barely worked. Ava looked up from her chair at the tiny kitchen table. "Daddy, why wouldn't he help us?" Marcus hesitated. He didn't want her to see the disappointment, the frustration. So he smiled, small, tired. "Maybe he didn't understand our story, sweetheart." 2 men, 2 worlds, about to collide again. The next morning, Marcus was back on the streets before sunrise resume folder tucked under his arm, Ava bundled in layers at his side. Every office door they tried led to the same polite shake of the head. By afternoon, rejection weighed on Marcus like lead. His last few dollars went to buying Ava a small cup of hot cocoa from a street vendor just to keep her warm. That evening, Ava's breathing turned shallow. The cough rattled her small frame. Marcus rushed her to the county hospital, the waiting room, a mix of flickering fluorescent lights, the scent of antiseptic, and the quiet despair of people out of options. Across the hall, Daniel strode toward a meeting with the hospital's board of donors. His gaze swept the room, landing briefly on Marcus, but recognition, if there was any, was gone in a blink. He kept walking. In the pediatric ward, Dr. Elena Ross, a young cardiologist, studied Ava's chart. "Your daughter needs surgery soon," she said softly. "Without it, she's in real danger." Marcus nodded, though his shoulders slumped with the weight of impossibility. Later in the staff lounge, Elena overheard two nurses talking about the man with the little girl in the waiting room. A memory stirred the Riverton Plaza collapse 8 years ago. She'd been an intern, then helping survivors. There'd been an engineer who risked everything to save trapped workers, and among them, a young project manager named Daniel Hayes. Her curiosity spiked. She pulled up archived news footage. There he was, Marcus Carter, covered in dust and blood, guiding a younger Daniel out from under the wreckage. Elena's breath caught. She turned to a colleague, voice low but urgent. "If I'm right, that man out there is the reason Daniel Hayes is still breathing." Night blanketed Chicago in ice and wind. Snow whipped sideways across the elevated Franklin Bridge, the river below a black churn of ice floes. Daniel's black sedan moved cautiously along the slick lanes until headlights swerved into view. A delivery truck skidding on black ice clipped the rear of his car. The sedan spun metal, screaming as it crunched against the guardrail. The rail gave way. Daniel's front tires dangled over the void, the engine humming above the roar of the river. His hands locked on the wheel, breath ragged. Then through the blizzard movement. Marcus. He didn't pause to think. He smashed the driver's side window with a tire iron glass slicing into his hands, blood welling instantly. "Give me your arm," he shouted over the wind. Daniel reached, their fingers locking. Marcus braced his boots on the icy pavement and hauled him out, both of them crashing onto the asphalt, just as the car's weight tipped forward and plunged into the freezing black water. For a moment, all that existed was the sound of their breathing in the howling wind. Marcus pushed himself up, a weary smile cutting through the cold. "Second time I've pulled you out of a collapse." "Sir?" Daniel's eyes widened, the realization slamming into him. His voice was a whisper, almost lost in the storm. "God, it's you." Before he could say more, his phone buzzed, Elena's name flashing on the screen. "Daniel, that man with you. Marcus Carter. He's the engineer who saved you during the Riverton Plaza collapse. You're alive right now because of him, twice." Daniel stood frozen on the bridge, the snow swirling around him, the weight of truth settling heavier than the night. Snow still clung to Daniel's coat when he stood before the faded door of Marcus's apartment. For a long moment, he couldn't bring himself to knock. "How do you face the man who's pulled you from death twice?" After you turned your back on him, the door opened. The chill inside made the hallway feel warm by comparison. In the dim living room, the space heater in the corner rattled weakly. On a worn couch, Ava lay bundled in 2 thin blankets, her small chest rising with effort. Her cheeks were pale, her lips tinged blue. Marcus stood between Daniel and the couch, arms crossed. "What do you want?" Daniel removed his gloves, his voice unsteady. "I judged you without knowing your story. You saved my life. Twice. Let me save hers." Marcus shook his head. "We don't need charity." Daniel stepped forward and knelt beside the couch, his gaze fixed on Ava's fragile frame, his heart constricting with pain and remorse. "This isn't charity. This is a debt I can never fully repay. And I won't carry that shame a third time." He pulled out his phone, dialing without breaking eye contact. His voice turned sharp, carrying the authority of a CEO, but also a newfound fierce determination. "Dr. Adams, pediatric cardiology, surgery team tonight, all expenses covered, and get a proper heater here now." Marcus's eyes glistened. "Why now?" Daniel's reply came without hesitation, sincere and resolute. Because you carried me out of the rubble when you didn't have to, and I almost walked away when you needed me most. I'm not making that mistake again. Within an hour, a new heater filled the room with steady warmth. Ava stirred her small hand, reaching out to Daniel. Her voice was a faint whisper, full of trust. Daddy says heroes don't wear capes, but I think you both do. Marcus and Daniel locked eyes over the little girl's smile, two fathers bound by a debt that could never be measured in dollars. 1 year later, sunlight spilled across the glass facade of the Carter Hayes Community Development Center. Inside, the hum of activity filled the space job training classes. In one room, shelves stocked with fresh groceries in another, and a corner play area echoing with children's laughter. At the center of it all stood Marcus Carter, no longer in a worn coat, but a crisp button-down shirt with a name badge reading Director of Community Projects. His daughter Ava, now healthy and radiant, dashed through the room, a blur of energy. Across the hall, Daniel Hayes watched with quiet pride. He still wore the tailored suits, but the guarded sharpness in his eyes had softened into warmth and gentleness. Marcus crossed the room. They didn't need words, just a firm handshake, the silent understanding of men who had pulled each other from the edge. A local reporter stepped forward, mic in hand. Mr. Hayes, you've been a major donor for years. Why start this program now? Daniel glanced toward Ava, then back to the reporter, his gaze deep, containing an entire journey of change. Because we're all one twist of fate away from needing the help we once refused to give. A warm, steady voiceover played over shots of the center's work. We judge too quickly, we listen too little. But when we choose to hear someone's story, we might just find the reason to change our own. Final shot. Ava holding Daniel's hand as they step into the sunlight, Marcus walking beside them like a true family, bonded by gratitude and humanity. Be the help you wish you had. Share this story.